Welcome to the first episode of our Orbital Blues series, everyone. We have game designer Sam Sleney with us to tell us a bit about the game, which I'm really excited about. Before we get to that, though, here's what to expect in our calls to action.
Yeah, join us after the show to hear all about the brand new show on the One Shot Network, James Tomato's The Ultimate RPG Podcast. You'll also hear about our Patreon info, including a new feature that has already started, as well as patron thank yous.
With all of that out of the way, please enjoy the show, everyone.
Welcome to Character Creation Cast, a show where we discuss and create characters, the best part of role-playing games, with guests using their favorite systems. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan, and this episode, my co-host Amelia and I are excited to welcome Sam Sleney, co-designer for the game we are covering in this month's series, Orbital Blues, a space western RPG.
Welcome to Character Creation Cast. I'm really excited that you're here and we finally get to talk about this game because I have loved it for a few years now. And
yeah, we've been talking about it for a while.
I'm so excited.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Do you want to tell our audience who you are, your pronouns, what sorts of things you do, where people could find you online? Plug all the things now.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is Sam Sleney. I am the first of the trio of Sleney, Clark, and Cox, the team behind Orbital Blues. I was the how do I put this? I brought the idea to Zach Cox of Soul Muppet, and they leapt aboard. And then we realized that neither of us can draw or do any kind of art. So I brought my friend Joshua Clark on board as our artist, and Orbital Blues was kind of the little project that we did throughout lockdown primarily. I think it was, looking back. I think we definitely started it before lockdown, because I remember pitching it to Zach in a pub, in a bar, and you weren't allowed to do that.
In a room together with other people?
In a room together, yeah, over pizza and beers, being like, I want to do a Sad Space Cowboy game, Cowboy Bebop, the RPG. And they were like, yes, absolutely. And I am great for ideas and stories and vibes, but I am not super with maths, mechanics, balance. I'm a vibes guy. I'm not a data-led.
Right there with you.
I'm not a data-led guy, but I was just like pure vibes. And so I did the kind of like creative directorship and a lot of the tonal writing, the atmosphere, tables, things like that. But the game Orbital Blues is built on Soul Muppet Publishing's Best Left Buried engine, which is a fantasy dungeon crawling game. It's very low fantasy, very old school Renaissance, and it has a lot of kind of Darkest Dungeon themes of going into holes in the ground and becoming miserable with that work that you do down there. And
so like capitalism?
Yeah. So having to do that to pay your way. And by going down there and doing that, you get sadder and madder and just generally kind of lose your grip on reality. And we thought that Best Left Buried was a good basis mechanically to build Orbital Blues off of, because the engine was very lightweight. There was 3 stats. I can't honestly, for the life of me, remember what they are called in Best Left Buried. But we retooled them for Orbital Blues into Muscle, Grit, and Savvy. And from there, the game just sort of grew out like a creative weed and latched onto other various ideas. And as a trio, me, Zach, and Josh made Orbital Blues. And yeah, it's now a thing that exists. We have just done a second, major follow-up, but there's actually, in truth, been a lot of expansions and adventures and little like smaller books that have been done since the game launched. It's really like hit it off with a creator community, and we've done everything that we can to take in people's ideas and adventures and publish them with our house art and house style. So I think there is 12 published adventures out now, but we just finished. Nice. We've just recently finished all of the production, pre-production, etc. on Orbital Blues Afterburn, which is the first major expansion of the book, and it contains everything that we felt we couldn't fit into the core book back then, and then some other new ideas that we've had since, and some responses to things that people have asked for since the game has been out. Yeah, that about covers it. You can find me online at Sam Sleney, Sleney. I am on Twitter/X, but I rarely use it. That is pretty much it. I am somewhat reclusive, but if you're at a gaming convention in the UK, you will probably find me there with Soul Muppet most of the time. My co-creators, Zach and Josh, unfortunately can't be with us this evening. I realize the tone of that makes it sound like they have died or something. They have not. I believe Zach is away running a Warhammer tournament, I think.
Ooh, fancy.
And Josh is currently over from Australia, where he usually lives, and all of his family are in one place this weekend. So he unfortunately can't be with us today, but he wanted to come on as my co today, because Josh rarely gets a chance to appear on these things given different time zones.
Yeah.
But alas, I am here embodying both of them in spirit. And thankfully, we had a pretty close-knit creative process with Orbital Blues. Yeah. I understand a lot of the design ideas behind the systems, as well as like a lot of the stylistic choices that Josh put into it, as well as just being like the vibes guy. And I think in character creation, vibes are really strong. Sometimes you can pick up a game and it can have a great vibe as a game, but then you might not always have the best kind of like sense of vibe for what characters work in that world, or vice versa. You might pick up a game, have a flick through it, and you've got loads of ideas for characters in that world, but then it becomes a case of, but what do they do? Where do they go?
Yeah.
What kind of goals and things do they work towards and accomplish?
Yeah, that's a thing we look at a lot.
Yeah,
is that connection.
Yeah, if I'm like a forever
there, sometimes
GM.
It's not.
Yeah, I always GM, but I always feel like my ability to run a game comes down to, okay, if I pick up the book and I have a flick through it, do I have ideas for characters? Because ultimately, I'm going to have to populate a world with characters. So I need to know who's got impetus and who's going to act against the party, act with the party. And some games just don't have that, but we wanted Orbital Blues to be very bombastic and like the characters in it be larger than life. It's a space western game. It's a game about sad space cowboys. I realize I've been talking about it and I'm not entirely talked about what it actually is.
Well,
but yeah,
we will get there in just a second too, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've spoken a lot. Do you guys want to tell me what Orbital Blues is?
Well, I mean, really, this is the interview portion where we get to ask you. Okay, so Elevator pitch.
What's in a game?
Elevator pitch, right? Okay, I've got to get in the mindset of when I'm at a convention, someone comes up to me.
Yeah, you're trapped in an elevator with somebody.
Yeah,
and
so
you're
a conversation, at a convention, we have a stereo, an old-fashioned stereo that we put on the table, which is a cassette player, and we usually have the cassettes for sale, and that is typically enough to get people's interest to come over, and they start looking at a physical cassette because a lot of people haven't seen them for the last 20 years or so. Yeah. So cassette gets people's attention. They come over, what's this? Because it's a pretty colourful book. It's like a sky blue generally. And they say, what's this? And I say, oh, yeah, so this is Orbital Blues. This is a game about sad space cowboys. And we usually have a little light up sign that says a game about sad space cowboys with us. So I usually gesture towards this. And in Orbital Blues, you play as an interstellar outlaw. You are a intergalactic down and out who has a rough and tumble life. You are part of a crew, and together you have to survive in a hyper-capitalistic galaxy that doesn't care if you live or die. It is a very corporate space that exploits people. Mankind has spread across the stars and made it a very corporate space in a sort of in a very future armory sort of way. Everywhere is like big bustling cities. Everywhere has like mega corps controlling resources, planets, systems. We left it very, the world building it has a theme, it has a tone. We mention a lot of the same corporations, companies in the book to give you a sense of like grounding, like Rostovik Arms or Ryan's, which is like there's a 7-Eleven ripoff. Ryan's is a sort of Trader Joe's kind of analogy. There's a lot of like fake brands, fake corporations. Sorry, not fake, but like fictionalized ones that we made up and we've populated the world with to give it this verisimilitude of a space dominated by corporations. And you typically are not somebody who works for those corporations. You are an interstellar outlaw. You are a bounty hunter. You are a space trucker. You are a space brackets insert blue collar job here. And it is your gameplay is simply to survive and get by and try not to let the crushing, the soul crushing vibe of the whole thing beat you down. It's a game about being quite economically disadvantaged and getting yourself through that and forming bonds and connections, both positive and negative, with those around you and the people that you have surrounded yourself with. The crew and the ship are just as much of a character. Rather, the ship is just as much of a character as any member of the crew, and that has a character creation process that you can go through and do, because a lot of the sci-fi games that we were inspired by, or sci-fi media that we were inspired by, are pieces of media where the ship is like a real tangible element of the ensemble, you know. Like every Star Trek series is generally most of the Star Trek series are named after where the ship or vessel on which they take place, such as DS9, Deep Space Nine, or like the Enterprise, etc. You have Firefly, you have Cowboy Bebop, the Bebop. So we wanted to like capture that feeling, because I've played a lot of games in the past where like the playgroup make something together collectively, and it's a really fun way to get the ball rolling creatively for the narrative. This elevator has gone way past the floor that we were looking for.
We've ridden it up and back down again.
This is really Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. We've gone through the roof. We're flying now. But I feel like I've covered Orbital Blues there. That is the game. That is what you do. And that's how, and making your character and making your ship with your playgroup is how you start playing it. And we have a ton of prompts in the book, and we have a ton of adventures and settings that you can pick up and play with. And the way that we've built it is you can use these settings or these adventures as springboards to start your own campaigns off, or the sort of not interconnected but bubble-like nature of these adventures means that the same crew could go through all of them. They all take place at generally disconnected locations throughout space, and you could play them in any order. Each one's a planet, or it's a star system, or it's a wreckage floating through space. You can go through it, and you can have the same play group come at these different adventures or scenarios and really build a spanning narrative that follows their journey. Or you could just pick one up and play it in an evening or two. It's a game that lends itself to both campaign or one-shot play, depending on what you feel like.
Yeah, so it sounds like it kind of has like that sort of TV series feeling of like it can be very episodic, but it can have that overarching plot if you want it to.
I put that in the mechanics with an element. Measures of time are arcs, scenes, sessions, or rather in the order of size there would be scene, arc, session, I think, or I can't remember. Oh no.
Scene, session, arc.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
We got
so a scene is what you think it is in a very television sort of sense. It is, okay, here's what's happening with these characters. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, roll for this, I'm going to talk to this guy, etc. Oh, what's happening with the other two members of the party? Cut. That was a scene. Then you have a session, which is what it says on the tin. It's a session of play. And then there's an arc, which is probably the loosest defined one because it's a narrative arc. And that one's very much at like the GM's discretion or what the play group would agree to. But we did that so that we could characterize how often you can do certain things. So small little abilities once per scene, or for the duration of this scene. For something a bit more impactful, you would go, okay, well, I can do this special ability once per session. And then there are other things that take place over the course of an arc, or you have, I think there's a couple of big things in the book that say this will take an arc or can be done once per arc. Because
we love a game where the mechanics enforce the way it's supposed to feel. We love that.
Yeah.
It's our favorite.
Yeah.
Our absolute favorite.
It's something that I've used in my own games, and like before I did Orbital Blues and I was like playing homebrew things, I would just be like, you can use that once per session, or we'll wait until you're out of this location. When you're in like tomorrow in game, next scene, you can use it again. Or when this thing's this power that you have, it will have recharged, presumably by the time that you have reached this location. And it was born out of that. And a lot of the game systems, I found personally that a lot of sci-fi games they lean into crunch quite heavily.
Yes,
people want to know a lot of things about space. They want to know various mechanical forces that are working.
What is a parsec, though?
Oh, I'll say what Harrison Ford would say. Who cares?
That's right. That's how I feel, though. Like in those really crunchy games, they're like, you can move 12 parsecs.
Yeah,
I'm like, is that
an
amount of time or a distance, or have we decided that yet? I don't want to look it up.
No. And I don't like looking things up in my games. I want to have a flick through the book beforehand, or, read it the night before, cover to cover. And it's like, okay, there's enough of that in my brain now that I can bring this to the table and everyone can have fun and nobody feels lost. But if we do have to look it up, the book isn't dense enough that someone can't flick to it. So that was why like Best Left Buried really lent itself well to the system that we decided to build Orbital Blues around. You only have 3 stats at the core of the game, which are muscle, grit, and savvy. And everything else after that, there are entries on your character sheet for listing them, such as your troubles or your gambits, which I'm sure we'll get to in the character creation process, but they're a big part of the game's mechanics. And then you also have like mementos, equipment, and then your ship also has various elements that you can roll for or alter over the course of a narrative, like through modifications and such. But what they do varies. Some are narrative things, like, you know, having medical facilities on board so you can save on your medical bills, to being like, okay, the chassis of the ship is old and antique and sought after by collectors, so don't be surprised if someone comes after your ship. Someone richer than you comes after your ship. It's quite varied, but it means that every time you roll up a set of characters and a ship for Orbital Blues, it will be different every single time. And the GM can use the tools for player character creation or ship creation to make NPCs just as easily and quickly as you would expect. And
That's
if
really
we
nice.
make a table, or like write a table or a generator for something in Orbital Blues, you can take it and you can use it elsewhere in that very DIY OSR style way.
Cool.
Nothing's like, oh, this module's not compatible with this other module. We've left everything nice and simple, so you can plug and play with whatever bits you feel like you want to plug and play with.
Nice. So it sounds like we covered the core concept and the setting for Orbital Blues pretty succinctly there. So I'm wondering, what sort of tools do we need to play a game of Orbital Blues?
Just D6s at the most basic level. There are a couple of tables in character creation which use a D100 or a D12, but I think there's only like 2 or 3 of those. You could just pick from them randomly if you didn't have those to hand, but ultimately pens, pencils, character sheets, D6s. That's it. It's very
cool.
rules light and very accessories light. We have a GM screen, and when we were designing that, I got asked to like go through the book and, hey, Sam, can you pull tables or rules references from the book that you think people might need? And it was honestly a bit of a time-consuming process, simply because we really had to like stretch sometimes to things that we thought players would need. It's a really useful resource, to be sure, but the game is very light and easy to run. The mechanics are really malleable in the storyteller or GM's hands. You can gain the upper hand at something, which is roll 2 dice and you take the highest, or you can be against the odds at something, which is roll 2 dice and take the lowest. And that is pretty much like the core mechanic. It's a roll over a game on 2d6. So it's really simple, and you have stats that range from technically -3, but if you're at -3 on something, then you're probably quite injured or something's gone very wrong. You're typically at +0 to being at +2 or +3 to your D6 rolls. So it's a nice and simple system. Best Left Buried, which it was built off of, I believe used a roll over 8 mechanic. In Orbital Blues, we decided to lower that to 7, I think, because we wanted the player characters to feel cool, and we didn't want them to die with the kind of frequency that some parties do in dungeon crawling games. It's all well and good making a character who has like a tragic backstory and like a cool memento and a great sort of connection to the ship, only to get off the ship and get shot by Greedo and die immediately.
Right. Yeah. Didn't even get to finish your beer first. And
Yeah.
it's terrible. So we've talked a little bit about, like this sort of dystopian kind of future of like corporations and all that kind of stuff. So what are characters really doing in these games? Are they, like looking, is it kind of like a looking for work bounty hunting sort of thing? Are they just like odd jobs? Are they just hanging out, being friends?
All of the above.
right.
You can, so the book itself, as I said, is got a lot of prompts in it for jobs. And they're not sort of, I turn up and I work in a cubicle all day kind of jobs.
That's the role-playing game I was looking for.
I know. I would, if I had more spare time, I would like to do the expansion to Orbital Blues where you're just a guy with a day job.
Like data entry.
Yeah. Roll for your field of data entry. Roll for what your typical patch lunch is.
Maybe for your next Kickstarter.
If someone's taking your lunch from the staff room fridge.
Yep. You got to roll to see if you're too close to the lunchroom, and then you're stuck smelling somebody's fish all day. Yeah. These are the tables that we need in games.
You are an Interstellar Outlaw, and the jobs that you get come off of bounty boards. So one thing that we established in the sort of soft canon of the universe is that corporations run space to the extent that whilst planetary governments exist and whilst system authorities exist, peacekeeping is also a business. And as a result, bounty hunting and like capturing wanted criminals or like killing wanted criminals is a fair industry to be in if you don't have that office job, if you don't have anything else to go to. But in contrast to that, there's also a lot of crime going unchecked in the universe, and so the jobs on the tables can range, which can be randomly generated, can range from anything from go and capture this vigilante and you have to bring them back alive, they're in a different star system, to go and steal this car that's in the collection of a famous movie star. It's very varied, and the game sort of is written to it's expecting you to do anything from a shootout to a heist to a long con. You can do, if you're a party of people who are just really into fraud, there is like
just really
Savvy,
big into fraud right now.
Yeah, big into fraud, big in my fraud era.
Fraud era, yep.
If you want to go around doing corporate crimes, you can do. It's all about making credits to pay the bills on your ship, to fuel up and get from planet A, where you're wanted for a heist, to planet B, where things are a little bit quieter, but the nature of your party means you're inevitably going to get into trouble and have to go to planet C and try and start over. It's very inspired by like neo-westerns. It's very like gang on the run kind of energy. It's got that sort of disparate band of people who are good at what they do but don't tend to fit in society kind of vibe that you get from Cowboy Bebop or Lupin the Third, two animes that I'm a big fan of, and the influences for those things we definitely like wore on our sleeve when it came to Orbital Blues. So what you do in game is really like it's up to the crew, but the storyteller also has the tools to throw the party in at the deep end. There's a mechanic in the game called credit and debt, which is basically how you do money. So it's assumed that your party is so on the back foot financially that it's kind of not worth keeping track of how many individual credits that you have. We just sort of have a loose measure of, yeah, you can afford to pay for food and a couple of beers every couple of days or so, but you're not going to be able to go out and buy yourself a new gun very easily. And so what the game does is it measures how much your crew or your Interstellar Outlaw are in credit, in the plus, or in debt, in the minus. And typically you'll band between being like at the center point of 0, or you'll be like a good 2 or 3 points into your debt, and doing a job will just push you closer back towards being in the positive. One big job might get you a couple of points into credit, but then the kind of costs that you would incur in doing that big job, like damage to your ship, medical bills because one of your guys got shot up. Oh, I have this, like, we have a sniper rifle, but the ammo for it is really hard to come by on the black market in this system. Oh, actually, we've ended ourselves up back at 0 and we've just kept the lights on for another day. And that's like, it goes back to the sort of Terry Pratchett theory of poverty and boots from Guards, I think it's in. Of like, if you can buy a good pair of boots, you won't need to keep buying boots. But the average person who keeps buying cheap boots always has to keep buying cheap boots because they keep wearing out. And therefore, the person who is in a degree of poverty stays in that degree of poverty, whilst someone who is richer kind of keeps themselves out of it just through sheer costs of maintenance. And like the game's themes of financial struggle are something that were quite personal to me. Like I grew up quite poor, and it's not that I wanted to explore it in a game like this, but I wanted to keep it feeling relevant and that you're always just kind of keeping your head above water and you're always treading water financially. If you look at the media that inspired this game in like Cowboy Bebop, for example, they never have any money. If they like do a big job, it's always like by the end of the episode, various costs have left them with no woolongs, with no credits again. And I wanted to capture that feeling that you get to the end of a session and everyone sort of does their tally ups of what's going to need to be paid. Or we captured the guy and we handed him in, but in the process we crashed our car into this cafe and they're going to want us to cover that bill. So actually we're in the red again and we're going to need to go get another job to try and cover that. So that impetus, that perpetual motion of credit and debt is what is a tool that the storyteller can use to get us back on track here to sort of generate jobs in perpetual motion for the crew. If you end up doing some job so big that you have quote unquote won, then there's a good chance that somewhere along the line in that job, you'll have done something that, the GM could use to, okay, well, that campaign is over, but
somebody's really not happy with you.
Yeah. There was a guy in session 2 who fronted you for all of that ship fuel. And, whilst you didn't think twice about never paying him back, he's got a cousin who's going to come and collect your credits. And, when we play Orbital Blues again in a couple of months after like our next campaign, that's going to be the thing that we pick back up with.
Remember that time that somebody asked and you said, sure, I'll do a favor for you in the future at some point to pay you.
Yep.
Yeah, remember
so
that?
it's building the tools into the game that keep the party in motion, because when it comes to like your fantasy dungeon crawlers, I'm going to go into this hole in the ground to get gold because I want to be rich, or whatever your like character's motivations for going dungeon crawling may be, are sometimes like cut and dry. They're sometimes like, okay, I've got the treasure, my guy retires or he dies in the process. And it would be easy for us to be like, okay, you are a crew, you have done a heist, you have scored a bunch of space credits, and you have bought a little apartment in space Florida, and you're retiring. But we wanted this feeling of always having to keep your head above water and always avoiding whatever creditor or favors.
It's a good way to keep the story moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is what you do. You try and keep your head above water. You try not to die. You try not to end up getting thrown in space jail. You try and keep a bounty off your own head, or if you don't manage to do that, you evade whatever interstellar or outlaws or law enforcement are coming to collect that. And yeah, you have a ship to do it with, and you have your crew, which is the play group. And you have your troubles and your gambits, which are your sort of, call them debuffs for now until we get into what they actually are, and your positives, your perks to help you out later.
What do you feel like is unique about this game? Because, like you've mentioned that there are definitely a lot of like media inspirations, and there are definitely like a number of sort of space Western style RPGs. But like, what do you feel like makes Orbital Blues something special in that genre?
Good question. So what we did was we didn't want this group of people who already start off as interstellar vagrants to feel like a group of murder hobos, murder vagrants.
Right.
We didn't want the party to feel like that in a game where, you have bounties to collect, you have costs to keep on top of, etc. It would be easy to just kind of take this game that facilitates, crime stories and neo-Western drama, etc., and it end up just becoming a grindhouse kind of gore fest, shootout, etc. And so in a lot of games, killing monsters nets you XP. That is quite reductive. There's a lot being done out there in the indie scene now that builds on that, takes away from that, etc. When we first approached Orbital Blues and how we would take it from, its OSR foundations of the Best Left Buried engine, and how would we make it into an engine fit for a story game, Zach and I sort of spent a while back and forthing and workshopping SAD for XP, as Zach calls it. And this really was quite a masterstroke from Zach here, which essentially was, okay, you are in space, you're in kind of rubbish circumstances. You're probably in a lot of debt. You are probably doing jobs you don't enjoy to make money that you don't get to keep. Much like real life. That
is the lived
so
experience.
Far, space is the only thing that isn't part of my normal life. I don't
so
travel
like
to planets, but the rest of this seems like my normal Tuesday.
Yeah, so when I was writing this, I was freelancing, and I had been freelancing for quite a while, and it was really taking its toll on me mentally. And I've struggled with anxiety and depression for much of my life, and as has Zach. And Zach and I actually met by working at the same soulless call center kind of place that dealt in insurance and mortgages and things like that. The kind of place that you would rob or shoot up in a game of Orbital Blues.
But the one that you're writing about in your new expansion.
Yeah. And it was really getting me down. And, I think there's a little piece of an artist in every piece of art that they create, whether they realize it or not, or whether they intentionally set out to do it or not. And for Orbital Blues, it was like, okay, well, what keeps you going amidst all this drudgery, and what is the measure by which you can gauge how long you've been going? And so the game has blues, which are essentially points garnered through narrative development of your character based around their troubles, which is usually like a not an affliction, that's the wrong word, but a negative, some kind of vice or habit or element of their character that is not super. It's not helpful,
Something they've struggled with before.
Yeah, a struggle that you have. So that might be bound to the bottle, which is, you're essentially like you're an alcoholic. You can't fly your ship without having a drink. Or it might be that you are already massively in debt prior to the campaign even starting. It could be that you are connected with the wrong people. You are in too deep, or here's one I just had a flick through. Brick in the wall. You're just a normal, well-functioning person. No angst or trauma, nothing. How did you end up here? And you've ended up becoming an adventurer because, let's face it, being a normal person in an adventuring situation would probably be a downside in a lot of cases.
Oh, yeah.
And you're
the
trouble...
one guy that just wants to go home. Just want to go home.
Yeah. And so your trouble is an element of your character, and by role-playing into it and embracing it and not wallowing in it, but sort of like playing it up for the camera in game is how you get your XP in the traditional sense, and that's how your character gets better. And generally the sort of soft rule is that for every 2 troubles that you have and you role play into, you get a gambit, which is the opposite of a trouble. It's your perks, your talents. And in doing this, you end up with a mechanical set of weighing scales for balancing out a story game. You could min-max Orbital Blues, I guess, by just being like the biggest, saddest sad sack going in the galaxy who is, a straight shooter, an ace pilot, etc. But you're thoroughly miserable and you have all of these other downsides. And even just in saying that, I've come up with a character who's not particularly two-dimensional. That is something that even like a very novice role player would come a long way in playing that character. Like, okay, yeah, I am the galaxy's best shot, but I am thoroughly depressed about the fact that I can't shoot without having a drink. Or whilst I might be the best shot in the galaxy, everyone knows that my mother before me was the best shot in the galaxy and I'm always living in her shadow. That's like another trouble that you can have. So
I love this so much. I love games that reward complicated characters.
Yeah.
It makes me happy.
It's like rewarding role play because I never think that there's a downside to letting somebody have a moment in the spotlight. I think it enriches everyone's experience at the table, whether they're a new player or an experienced one. And it helps bring inexperienced players out of their shell to see other people at the table really getting into a role and a character, and it makes them feel more comfortable immersing themselves in that, which I think is a
key.
Yeah, it's a big
it's
barrier.
Like giving people like a way to do it without feeling like, so like something like D&D, they're always like, our story is great, all of this stuff is happening, and I'm always like, it's happening in spite of the mechanics of the game. Like, it's cool that you're having all these awesome like character moments and everything, but the game isn't what's doing that. Your table is. And I love games that offer like mechanical incentives for that, or mechanical ways to hook people in, because it is in your first experience like kind of daunting to be like, okay, I'm in front of all these people, I have to like play this out, and what if it comes off as weird? But when you have mechanics that allow for that, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to lean into it. And even if it's weird, I can be like, I'm doing it for the game. Like it invites you to partake in that in a way that things like D&D and other games like that don't.
And so like when I'm playing a game, even if it's not a story game and it's got traditional XP or some kind of other esoteric XP system that I didn't bother reading that part for, I will at the end of a session, I'll ask my party like, okay, who enjoyed what from each other at this table, who thought they had good scenes or good actions or good moments, and I go around my table and I give everyone a chance to like nominate someone else at the table for a role-playing or story moment that they enjoyed, and generally it results in everyone kind of, patting each other on the back, and I think that's a really nice way of bringing people out of their shell roleplay wise. But also, like, of all the groups that I've done that with, which is a lot, everyone still tends to kind of level up equally. You know, two people might shine one week, and then the other two might shine the next week, inspired by what they saw the week previously, and it just brings up everyone's level of play. And we mechanized that for Orbital Blues, and it was okay, by playing into your troubles and having these moments where you add depth to your character or add depth to other people's character by them coming to your assistance or your aid emotionally, physically, etc. That is how you get your cool stuff. That's how you develop your character. And it's garnered us a lot of praise, and it's what, to answer your question, it's what has set us apart from other sci-fi games. There's a lot of different ways to engage with sci-fi in the role-playing sphere right now, but they tend to focus on differing elements of that sci-fi. For example, something like Scum and Villainy is very much like, it's heavy on the space western thing, and it's named after the whole Den of Scum and Villainy thing from Star Wars. It's your cantinas and things in dusty space. It's very lasers and ragged, and then you have Mothership, which is for facilitating your space horror, your space thriller. I know that recently they've branched out into other adventure flavors and styles, but that is still at the core
that's really their
of
niche,
Mothership.
Like creepy space horror. Like, you find an empty ship and it's infested with things.
Yeah,
and read a lot of good Mothership.
Whilst I'm not like, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, this Orbital Blues is really cool. It's like Firefly, the game. I have never seen more than one episode of Firefly in my life. But I was like, at the time, I was like, what is the game to fulfill space Western but with drama and with a bit of kind of heft to it that's not sort of gonzo or guns blazing or scary, or, you know, putting our backs to the wall, but then also asking like why, because no matter what kind of game I run, I'm always interested in the character's motivations for adventuring. Why have you left your home? Why have you left your family if you had them in the first place?
I think it tells a lot about players too. Like when they come to the table with those characters, it says to a GM, like, this is something that I'm interested in, and I like, these are the strings that I want you to pull on. I think awarding XP for those kinds of moments too, or like advancement for those things, is personally, I think, more fulfilling as a player, because there's also nights where you go into things and you roll like garbage. And you're like, I put my heart and soul into telling this story. I talked about what happened when I didn't make it. I still fully participated, and I've got nothing to show for it. And that is a bummer. And so like, I love like character-driven XP too, because it gives me as a player more control over that too, because the dice are random and I don't control them. And it really sucks if you're like, I'm putting everything I have into this scene and I can't do anything, but I'm still like role playing the crap out of it, and then I get nothing to show for it because I didn't do anything, you know?
Yeah.
That's a bummer.
And it's definitely one of my pet peeves in a game if I'm playing, where I roll and I don't hit that magic number, and the GM just goes, okay, you miss, and then moves on to the next person. I've waited for my turn, I've waited for my go around, and because my dice didn't show the result that I needed, then I don't get anything, and my character kind of just sort of freeze frames. I'm a big fan of the yes and or the no but kind of school of thought, and I wanted to have that reflected on a bigger scale of play of, okay, well, my character is not mentally in a state to go to the shootout and capture the bounty today, for whatever reason. Maybe they were just, you know, on the bottle a little bit too hard last night. What's that character doing? It's not something combat-y, but how are they advancing as well? You know, it's rare that in a TV show you have characters don't exist in a bubble. You have an idea of what they're doing even when they're not on screen. And I don't think that a lot of RPGs think about that in their construction, and this whole sad for XP thing that we refer to it as, like, it feeds into that. What is my character doing when they're not adventuring, or when they are adventuring? What's eating at them? What's keeping that the hypothetical viewer of this TV show watching? You know, why is this character doing this? And by exploring that, that is how you get your advancement points, so to speak.
That's very cool. People
have asked us, like, could you do like a more in-depth mechanical advancement system? And to that, it's like, okay,
you can do that at your table if you want to, but no thank you.
There's only 3 stats, and there's only 3 stats, and they range from like values that are balanced between 0 and 3. If you go any higher than that, you're going to become, you know, a walking god amongst people. You're not going to really face anything that's mechanically going to give you any challenge. We need to level you out a bit so you're a believable kind of character. And the way that we've done this is with the troubles, because, you know, just like real life, the most talented individuals, the most gifted individuals that you might meet are sometimes like the most troubled ones that you can meet as well. Like, you know, think of any great musician or artist. They are rarely without some kind of problem or vice or issue. And it's not to say that they are things that give artistry or creativity or talent, their strength, but we wanted to reflect a thing of, okay, you are good at this thing, but what ails you as a person, as a as a soul? Like, what are your issues? Because you clearly have them if you're leaving behind the office job or the 9 to 5 or your friends and family to try and strike it out amongst the stars. And why
I'm sorry,
is it
are you
that
saying
you're doing
that
that?
well-adjusted people don't run around to planets and get in gunfights?
No, they don't. And if Zach was here, Zach often says about Best Left Buried that normal, well-adjusted people don't go into holes in the ground looking for treasure.
Exactly.
No. Your average adventurer is rarely a sound-minded, well-rounded individual. They're doing what they're doing for various reasons that are a reflection of their character, or like
I think
their
they say
inner
that about
psyche.
game designers and podcasters too. Like,
Yeah.
People
Absolutely.
who are doing well don't get into.
Yeah, I didn't just make this for fun.
This is my book
Amazing.
of trauma.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I find myself coming back to the little Orson Welles interview snippet. Did poverty help my creativity? No. So it's like it doesn't help. But if we're gonna take that dark and less than pleasant underbelly that often comes with talent, creativity, that extra little bit of spark, we're going to make it so that it is something to be, I don't want to use the word gamified because that sounds like we trivialize it, and we don't. The book very much sets out both at the start and at the end to say, we're not trivializing, struggles and vices and issues. We're just trying to reflect the fact that in a world such as this, which is, sometimes scarily resembles our own, it is hard to get by without some of these things affecting you. And we have used it as a way to gauge the development of your character.
I think it's a reality that a lot of people are living in. Like as someone with like a very severe bipolar disorder, like it does complicate my life, but it does make me think and act and produce things in ways that other people can't, because if you asked me and you were like, hey, would you rather have bipolar disorder and not be creative? Or but like nobody is like, you know what, I'll pick the bipolar disorder. I would way rather not have it. But like, since I'm here having it, like I might as well use the parts of it I can to my advantage.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very realistic thing that I think a lot of people are living with, is like, nobody would pick those vices or those disabilities or those, like difficult things in their life. But since you weren't given an option, I'm going to make the best of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there's nothing wrong with like exploring that at the table, especially because a table is a safe space for me to be able to play around with those things.
Yeah, that's the idea. It's meant to be a cathartic experience. Yes, I am a sad space cowboy, and maybe I have the same issues that I have in real life. But here I have a spaceship and a 6-shooter, and
people give me points for it, which they do not do.
And carte blanche to just go around and start a fight with people I disagree with, and the consequences are at this table in this game. So I think in a lot of ways it's really healthy, and especially like because it sounds like all of you went into it, like very careful and being like, look, we're not trying to like glorify this or gamify things that people really struggle with, but to like face the fact that that is a reality for a lot of people. And certainly in a setting like that kind of dystopian Western, like corporate future, this is a thing that you would be dealing with. And so I think as long as it's done with care and the understanding that it's not like, hey, like,
I'm bipolar, so when I'm manic, I get more points. It's like, no, that's not how it works. I wish it was, but yeah, I mean, I think when it's done with care, I think it's can be really helpful to people too.
Yeah, and we've had infinitely more people praise it and enjoy it and love the way that it explores the mechanical sort of representations of these troubles in balance with the mechanical benefits of the gambits, and just general praise for the tone, the atmosphere, the vibe of the game. Then we've had people detract it and say, "Oh, actually, well, I think you're appropriating misery or trauma, etc." And so I think we've done something right. People enjoy it. And we get a lot of people coming to us being like, yeah, I really enjoyed playing this. It was very emotional. It was very gripping. It was engaging, etc. So I would say that's what sets us apart.
Too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say that's what sets us apart from other sci-fi games out there. This has got some... where it doesn't have crunch, it's got emotional hooks, and it's got it's got a lot of soul. I think. I know that sounds a bit artsy.
That's a good word for it.
Pretentious, but I think it's like it puts soul at the forefront, and character and people and connections in a way, both vibes based, but also mechanically as well. So yeah, I would say that's what sets us apart from, say, Scum and Villainy, and Mothership and Traveller.
Yeah.
Traveller. Less crunch, more feeling. Yep.
Yeah, Traveller is Student Debt, the role-playing game.
Yeah.
That's for another time.
Yeah. We actually, on the cover of Orbital Blues, it actually says Traveller's Welcome above Orbital Blues. That was a sheer coincidence. It wasn't like a sort of subliminal, hey, ditch Traveller and come play Orbital Blues instead.
But also do.
Yeah. Josh, the artist, had never heard of Traveller before. He put that on there as like an art thing. And I think Zach said to him, like, is that a little like sort of reference at Traveller? And Josh, who is an artist but not super connected into the RPG sphere, or he definitely wasn't then, was like, no, what's that?
What?
I don't know.
That's a really funny coincidence.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is Orbital Blues, and that's what sets us apart.
That's very cool. Call to action.
Yeah, like that. I really enjoyed this series of episodes. So first of all, because it was a game I've been wanting to cover for a while.
Very good game.
Since I got it for the NES in 2022, I think. I really like this one.
It's been out for a while, yep.
Yeah. But also because we just had like the most amazing discussions, not only about the design process, but about the industry, which I don't think is something we get to a lot, We
don't dive into industry chat too terribly much, but like this whole series has it sprinkled throughout. And it was honestly very refreshing to hear all that Sam had to say about the process and like behind the scenes, quote unquote, stuff dealing with the industry and all that.
Yeah, I think it gave a lot of insight that we don't usually get. Because I know we always like our designer episodes because we get that deep dive into game design in general a lot. But this is the first time I think that we've really gotten to talk like inside baseball.
Yeah, exactly.
About RPGs. So
yeah, and it doesn't end with this episode. That's I'm really excited about.
No.
Like the whole series has it sprinkled throughout. But this episode, a little bit next episode. And the discussion episodes are just oozing with industry chat and game design chat and like just generally good advice for new and upcoming designers. And honestly, good advice for everybody at the table too. Like it's all there. We cover all sorts of bases.
We do. I don't think we like really used our outline all that much on this one. Like
no,
Sam was just like Sam came in and was like ready to go, and we're like, okay, I will follow your lead.
We already got past all this stuff. We're good to go.
Yeah, this is a really exciting series. I'm excited. It's exciting. I'm excited.
I'm excited
for everybody to hear it.
I know. It's good. It's very good. Absolutely.
Before we let you go for the day, here are our calls to action for this week.
Yeah, really exciting news first up. The One Shot Network has a brand new show that launched last week. If you haven't caught it, James D'Amato has a new discussion show called the Ultimate RPG Podcast. In this new show, James sits down with some truly amazing guests to talk about GMing, backstory, and so much more. I was actually able to listen to the first episode where Dylan Apelian joined James to do some world building and character creation, only utilizing the tools from James's Ultimate RPG book series.
How dare he not invite us for character creation and world building?
It sounds like it's going to be going through all sorts of different exercises and topics through all of his books and stuff.
I'm sure.
So there's going to be plenty of time for that. But yeah, it's super fascinating. If you like this show, you're probably going to like this other show as well. So definitely go check it out and let James know what you think about the experience. It's pretty fantastic so far. So I can't wait to hear more. It was such a treat seeing that creative brainstorming in action. And just go to either oneshotpodcast.com or wherever you get podcasts and check it out.
If you like what we're doing here and you want to support our show, you can head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. You can sign up for any of our basic tiers as a free trial. Each level has a lot of great rewards. We think they're great. You can join our Sticker of the Month Club at the $10 level, where you get a new sticker for every month. Usually it's in the theme of the series we've covered. Sometimes it's just about the show in general. You can get some custom C3 dice and a personalized thank you card handcrafted by me for the $5 and up levels, as well as chit chats every week. Every week we're able to do them, but most weeks for the $1 and up level. We've also started releasing our bonus outtakes for all patrons, even at the free level. So there's no reason not to head over there and at least join up as a free member, especially given the fact that last month was recording with Jeff and John, and I was really frustrated. So I'm sure there's some gold in them Thar Hills.
There's quite a few minutes of wonderful stuff that we had to cut from the episode. Waiting for all the patrons, even the free ones over there right now. So
what percentage of those outtakes would you say is just me grunting?
No comment. But we also like to thank all of our patrons personally every single episode. You truly do all mean the world to us. So let's go ahead and get this started with DJG, aka Tigranosaurus, Eric Bonson, Daryl Holiday II. Thanks.
Shadim Cabal, the Shyest Barbarian, and Benjamin Sweeney, you're the best.
Lorcan McInnes, Rob Fletcher, and Kevin Brown, many thanks to you.
Here we go. Tentacle Duck, John Adamus, and A3 Sketchpad, we are so grateful to all of you.
Cole McCallum, Carlos Salazar, and Eric S., we're happy to have you here with us. Thank you.
Many thanks to Ian Putmeyer, Storygoth, and Liam G.
Brian Colm, Garden GM, and Tanglefoot, you all rock. Thank you.
Blue Kryptonite, Danny, and Nicole Trainer, you are the best. Thank you so much.
Liam Murray, Kenning, and Brian Kurtz, thanks for supporting our dreams.
Mike E. Fair and Drew Owen, thank you both so much.
And thank you to all of our future patrons. Your support means the absolute world to us. Every bit of your support helps tremendously, and we are incredibly grateful to all of you. If you are already supporting the Patreon or can't afford to do so right now and still want to show your support for the show, the next best way is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Podcast Addict, or even Facebook. We'll go ahead and read your review right here, and thank you personally.
That's all we have for today's episode. This is going to be another big series, but we promise the conversation we had along the way is way too phenomenal for us to cut any of it. You can stay tuned next week when we get into our actual character creation. But until then, take care, stay safe, drink some water, and keep making those amazing people. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us for part 1 of this character creation series. We'll be back in part 2, picking up right where we left off.
Character Creation Cast is a production of the One Shot Podcast Network and can be found online at www.charactercreationcast.com. Head to the website to get more information on our hosts, this show, and even our press kit. Character Creation Cast can also be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at CreationCast, or on our Discord server at discord.charactercreationcast.com. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Bolter, and I can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Lord Neptune or online at lordneptune.com. Our other host, Amelia Antrim, can be found on Twitter and Blue Sky at Ginger Reckoning. Music for this episode is used with a Creative Commons license or with permission from the podcast they originated from. Further information can be found within the show notes. Our main theme music is Hero Remix by Steve Combs and is used with a Creative Commons license. This podcast is owned by us under Creative Commons. This episode was edited by Ryan Bolter. Further information for the game systems used and today's guests can also be found in the show notes. If you'd like to support our show, find us on Patreon. Get access to bonus episodes, exclusive merch, and much more at patreon.com/charactercreationcast. Thanks for joining us. And remember, we find that the best part of any role-playing game is character creation. So go out there and create some amazing people. We'll see you next time.